Luke chapter 14 and verse 27. And whosoever doth not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. I want to give all infinite honors, praises, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Haracha'a Kodash for giving me the spirit to do this lesson. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that taught us this truth in sincerity. They steered us well and they rule well. Salutations to the hopeful elect. May the blessing of election be upon your house. This is the brother Zion coming at you with another lesson to feed the lambs through the Holy Spirit. Haracha'a Kodash. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and to the point. And in this lesson, we are going to get into bearing the cross. All right, you got to bear your own cross. Okay, in this truth, you know, you will have things that have happened to you strange, or you may have situations that come up. You know, it's all about the walk. You know, sometimes the Lord will put an obstacle in front of your face just to see where your faith is at. You know, are you going to call on brothers? Are you going to seek a way out, like an out, or are you going to bear that cross? You know? Now, let's get that word bear right quick. In the Greek,
Strong's G 941, bastadzo,
to take up with hands, to take up in order to carry or bear, to put upon oneself something to be carried, to bear what is burdensome. You hear that? To bear what is burdensome. You know, the outward circumstances. You know, you may be going through a whole lot of everything, but you got to bear that cross. You got to show Yahweh Shema Shai that you are in fact a soldier. All right. And be still and know that he is. All right. And I'm speaking to myself first, you know. All right. And applying that wisdom, you know. And I'm speaking to myself first. You know, we all got to, you know, continue to apply that wisdom to the best of our ability. All right. And be result based. All right. Right. So let's go back. Luke chapter 14 and verse 27. And whosoever doth not bear his cross. You hear that? Whosoever, that's anybody, you know, because Yahweh Shema Shai is not a respecter of persons, man. So it's anyone, you know, doth not bear his cross and come after me. Yahweh Shai had to bear a cross, you know. Yahweh Shai suffered on the cross. Yahweh Shai died on the cross, you know. It was an entire process of that hour of temptation, man. You know? So if we can't handle these little trials, if we can't endure these little trials, how can we handle the big trials during the time of Jacob's trouble? Where is your faith going to lie at, man? You know? Is it going to lie with this world? Or is your faith going to lie with Yahweh Shema Shai? Now I got the book right quick. I got Sirach chapter 2 and verse 4. It reads, matter of fact, I start at verse 1. Sirach chapter 2 and verse 1. My son, if thou come to serve the Lord Yahweh by Shema Shai, prepare thy soul for temptation. You see? So off the back, when you sign up, all right, to serve Yahweh Shema Shai, the Lord already saying it's a prerequisite you're going to have to endure. So you're going to have to endure trials. The Lord is going to test your reins, you know. Verse 2, set thy heart aright and constantly endure. You hear that? Constantly endure. You don't give up. You keep pushing. You had a faith, you know. If all else fails and you run out of all options, and then you go to the brotherhood. But that's the last option, you know, because you can put burden on the church, you know. So you got to constantly endure. You got to bear that cross. You know, Yahweh Shema Shai he gonna work it out through the Spirit. You can't be so hasty. Got to be still, calm down, be unmovable, you know, because if you're not, it'll come off like you're overreacting. And I'm speaking to myself first, you know. And constantly endure and make not haste in the time of trouble. You hear that? And make not haste in the time of trouble. A lot of times that's easier said than done, depending on the type of situation, but you still got to pump your brakes through the Spirit and let Yahweh Shema Shai work through the Spirit, you know. Cleave unto him and depart not away. You hear that? Cleave unto him and depart not away. Because if you pray, don't worry. If you worry, don't pray. Simple as that. You know, you cleave unto Yahweh Shema Shai in the times of good and in the times of bad. Just don't call on Yahweh Shema Shai just because you got a situation and you need mercy, or, you know, you want to call on Yahweh Shema Shai regardless, because that's your power. That thou mayest be increased at thy last end, you know. Salvation, a crown, you know. You are at a perpetual standing position in rulership, you know, under our Lord Yahweh Shai. Whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully. You hear that? Whatsoever. It can be anything. Anything. You know, financial. It can be a living situation. You know, whatever the type of situation it may be that vexes you. Whatever situation that Yahweh Shema Shai will put on you, or scenario they put on you, just know that your name was brought up in the heavens like Job. You know, so obviously you're doing something right. You know, because if you're not catching hell, the Lord ain't, you know, you are not considered a son or daughter. And you need to be looking over the shoulder. You know what I'm saying? Because Yahweh Shema Shai gonna possibly put you to death, or preserve you for a bigger judgment. You know, so you want to get chastised by Yahweh Shema Shai, you know? And the scriptures go into chastisement by Yahweh Shema Shai isn't joyous, but grievous, you know? I mean, like, it hurt catching hell from Yahweh Shema Shai, but a lot of times the hell that we catch is self-inflicted. And I'm speaking to myself first, you second. You know, a lot of the affliction that happens is self-inflicted. It could be a bad decision. It could be a bad choice. All right. that is going to determine the next 6 months, six months of your life, man. All right. Whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully. You take it cheerfully. You don't be grievous about it. The water, Yahweh Shema Shah, for putting me in this scenario, because you're going to learn from it. I promise you. All right. And if the Lord really dealing with you, you're going to get some counsels in that. And the Lord going to counsel you. And the scriptures say, despise not the Lord's counsel. You can't despise that counsel because, mind you, when there's 2 or 3 witnesses, Yahweh Shema Shah is in the midst. So that's Yahweh Shema Shah speaking through those brothers, all right, and using their voice to convey that message. And it's up to you to have them spiritual ears open, all right, and get the assignment and do the assignment and pass the assignment. You know? Whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully and be patient when thou art changed to a low estate, right? And be patient when thou art changed to a low estate. You know, sometimes it may be the end of your ass whooping, or sometimes it may be the beginning or during the ass whooping, you know, because Yahweh Shema Shah whoop his kids different. Some kids get a slap on the wrist. Some kids get beat with the buckle. You know, some kids get put on punishment and the Lord take all their shit. You know? So, you know, you have to be patient. You can't be hasty when you are changed to a low estate. You know? Verse 5, for gold is tried in the fire and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. You see? See, gold gets purified and you can see yourself in it when it is completely pure after it been in the fire. You know, and you put the gold in the fire to purify that gold even more. You know? And that goldsmith, all right, he know when to take that metal out. He know when that gold is complete. He knows that gold is done. All right, when he can see himself in it. And Yahweh Shema Shah gonna keep us in the fire until he see himself in us. When he get ready. You know? And a lot of times Yahweh Shema Shah will put some hell on your life because you ain't been praying in a minute too. He'll do that too. Like, hey man, I ain't heard from you in a minute, man. What's up? You know? Sometimes the Lord will do that too. An acceptable man in the furnace of adversity. Acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. You see? We have to prove ourselves to Yahweh Shema Shah. The scriptures going to prove a friend. We got to prove ourselves to Yahweh Shema Shah. You know? We just can't just automatically feel entitled to a crown. No, you have to earn that crown. You know? You have to show Yahweh Shema Shah you're worthy of that crown. You know, that's why you have to bear your own cross, man. Just like what we brought out. You gotta bear your own cross. You know? Because if you cannot bear your own cross and you come after Yahweh Shema Shah, you are not worthy and you can't be his disciple. Yahweh Shema Shah looking for soldiers. You know, during the time of the MOTB, you gonna fold if you can't handle these little trials. You know? So we gotta, you know, endure. Now I got Let's go back to the blue letter right quick. I got the book of Exodus chapter 14. I'm going to read this in the NLT. I got Exodus 14. Let's go to verse 10 in the NLT. As Pharaoh approached the people of Israel, looked up and panicked when they saw the Egyptians overtaking them. You see? They wasn't being still. Jake was just, panicking, frantic, shaking, overreacting, and you a whole Israelite, man. All right. Verse 11. And they said to Moses, why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? You see, just overreacting. Hastening in a time of trouble. Just like what we just brought out. Weren't there enough graves for us in Egypt? What have you done to us? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Did we tell you this would happen while we were still in Egypt? We said, leave us alone. Let us be slaves to the Egyptians. It is better to be a slave in Egypt than a corpse in the wilderness. They didn't say nothing about enduring, having faith. Yahweh Shema Shah gonna make sure we are gonna be restored. It's all panicking. It's all hastening in a time of trouble. It's all overreacting. See, when we face our scenarios that Yahweh Shema Shah place on us, we can't have this spirit of overreacting. Being hasty in speech and everything. And, do you believe Yahweh Shema Shah gonna deliver you out of all your troubles? Because Yahweh Shema Shah said that he's gonna deliver you out of all your troubles, but you have to believe it. You have to have faith with that and trust that and walk in trust, faith, and belief. Verse 13. But Moses did tell but Moses told the people, don't be afraid. You hear that? Calm down. Just stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. Now let's go to that word still right quick. Let's see if I can get that right quick. I think this is it. Salakia, bear with me. I'm about to get that word still. Lord's will. It wasn't in the NLT one. Oh, there we go. Here's still.
Strong's H 3320. Yatsev. Yatsev.
To place, set, stand, set or station oneself. You hear that? Calm down. You're calm. Knowledge and wisdom shall be the stability of thy times. You see? The outward circumstances isn't going to move you from your deliberate purpose. To stand, to set or station oneself, present oneself. When you present yourself to Yahweh Shema Shah, you're going to be on the ground. Face to the ground. Not even moving. You going to present yourself to Yahweh Shema Shai pacing the floor? Or are you going to stand still and you going to bow your face to the earth and you going to pray? And you're going to present yourself properly to Yahweh Shema Shai. Yahweh Shema Shai, what's the point of even believing in Yahweh Shema Shai if every scenario is brought up or happened to you, you're frantic or panicking? You know, you can't be paranoid. You know, you have to know that Yahweh Shema Shai got you at all times because you made Yahweh Shema Shai a priority. So in a time of trouble, in different scenarios, Yahweh Shema Shai is going to make you a priority and get you out of it. To station oneself, take one stand, present oneself, stand with someone. Strong's definitions, offer, it say present selves, remaining, resort. All right, you know what I'm saying? So that's the point. All right. You can't be moving spiritually. You got to stay still. All right. Calm down. You know? Verse 13 in the NLT, it says, but Moses said, Salakia, but Moses told the people, don't be afraid. Just stand still and watch the Lord, Yahweh Shema Shai, rescue you today. It said today. It didn't say tomorrow, next week. There was no window here. There wasn't a 2-week window or a month or 10 years or no. This was like right now. Literally. You know, this is, you know, a time where you need a miracle. And you've been in situations like that where you needed a miracle and Yahweh Shema Shai gave you that miracle that you needed to get that, you know, task done or for that certain scenario to end. You know, the Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. The Lord himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. And with that, I want to give all infinite honors, praises, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that taught us this truth and sincerity. They steered us well and they rule well. Salutations to the hopeful elect. May the blessing of election be upon your house. We on the next one. Abaratazah. Shalom.